I'm Brian Watkins in the Exploration Science Strategy and Integration Office, and I'm going to give a brief update on our upcoming plans for a South Pole Aitken Basin Science Definition Team, which we're now calling SPADES. So this is South Pole Aitken Basin Discovery, Exploration, and Sample Return. Next slide. All right, so just a little bit of background context for why we're going to be kicking off this science definition team. So in the most recent planetary decadal survey that came out, Origins, Worlds, and Life, the Endurance A South Pole Aitken sampling campaign was named or was recommended to be the highest priority for the Lunar Discovery and Exploration Program. So this Endurance A concept is a long duration rover that would traverse about 2,000 kilometers across the South Pole Aitken Basin. It would bring about 100 kilograms of samples that were taken throughout sites in the basin back down to the South Polar region to HLS or an Artemis crew for return to Earth. And this mission concept outlined several science objectives that would be addressed, including solar system chronology and planetary evolution. So again, here you can see in the blue box the recommendation that was actually in Origins, Worlds, and Life. They recommended that Endurance A utilize CLIPS to deliver this long duration rover to the moon. And you can find the full report if you want to read more about that mission concept at that link that's highlighted there. Next slide. So in response to this decadal recommendation, we're going to be convening, again, the South Pole Aitken Basin Discovery, Exploration, and Sample Return Science Definition Team. Sorry, a bit of a mouthful. And this SDT will be providing an analysis to NASA on prioritized science objectives and requirements, and as well as different implementation approaches for achieving this South Pole Aitken Basin Sample Return and Exploration mission. And so the analyses that come out of this SDT will be used by NASA to inform our decisions, again, on the prioritized science goals and ultimately how we want to implement this near-term SPA mission. Next slide. All right, so the next few slides, I'm going to show you some information about the anticipated scope as well as membership and timeline of the SDT. And I'll just caveat this with any of these are still subject to change at this point. We're waiting on a few final approvals before we kick this off. But right now, this is kind of what we're working with. So just to go over briefly, this is not the full scope of the SDT. I've just tried to highlight a few high-level things here. We will be asking this team to, again, define and prioritize science goals for a South Pole Aitken Basin sample return and exploration mission. These science goals will have to be traceable to questions and objectives that are outlined in the decadal as well as other community documents. We also want the SDT to define a hierarchy of science objectives that are responsive to those prioritized goals. Determine any example locations in SPA where these science goals can be met. We want them to tell us the number and type of samples as well as in situ measurements that are needed to address the prioritized science goals, as well as define a set of strawman science instrument types that can achieve the science objectives, as well as any required measurement capabilities. We will solicit, for science instruments at a later date, and some of those decisions will ultimately be on the NASA side, but we want to get a strawman science suite of instruments from this study. We do want a science traceability matrix that flows down from these top-level science goals down through the science objectives and measurements, and then ultimately culminating in the requirements and capabilities for the payload suite, as well as any potential mobility or sample return systems that come out of the study. And then finally, we're asking the SDT to present a variety of implementation approaches that will allow us to achieve the proposed science objectives. And we do want them to consider a variety of approaches that can address this hierarchy of objectives. So not necessarily assuming the endurance implementation, but obviously, long duration rovers are a part of the scope. All right, next slide. Okay, just a few more details about the SDT. We do anticipate a start date this summer. Again, hopefully sooner rather than later, just pending a few final approvals. We will be putting out a call for people to self-nominate to serve on the SDT, and this is essentially imminent at this point. So you should expect to see that anytime now. It will likely be a short window of time when we have that call open, because we do want to get this again kicked off by the summer. So we'll put out some announcements about that when the time comes. We anticipate the SDT lasting somewhere between 12 and 18 months. And right now, the meeting cadence and format that we're looking at, again, subject to change, would be about 4 to 6 working meetings that are 2 to 3 days in length. These will be a mix of hybrid and virtual meetings. But this won't be the only time the SDT meets. They will also probably have interim virtual meetings held as needed in between those bigger meetings. Unfortunately, these meetings will not be open to the public, but the SDT may choose to solicit community input through white papers or some other mechanism. And again, this will ultimately be up to the SDT to decide how they want to do that. We will be paying SDT members who are eligible. They will get an honorarium for their time and participation at these the longer duration 4 to 6 meetings. So again, we'll provide more information about that later. But we do again appreciate the time and effort that goes into this and want to be able to compensate at least a bit if we can. We expect a draft analysis report will be due to NASA about a year after the SDT starts, with a final analysis report no later than 6 months after the SDT concludes. You can see the points of contact listed there. I will be the primary point of contact, but I will be on leave for part of the summer. So in the interim, you can reach out to Deborah Needham if you've got questions. Next slide, please. I think this is my last slide, just a little bit of information about anticipated membership details. We're looking to fill the SDT with about 8 to 12 members. This will include 1 chair and 1 or 2 early career and or current graduate student documentarians who will essentially serve as note takers during the discussions. And we're defining early career here as less than 10 years post-terminal degree. Membership will be open to both U.S. and non-U.S. based individuals. We are looking at getting some individuals who represent foreign space agencies to also participate, but that will be done through a separate application process. And you can see a list of anticipated subject matter expertise laid out here. I won't read all of those bullets for you, but we are covering kind of a variety here of different science expertise. We are committed to ensuring that we have balanced representation on the SDT. You can see this is across a range of things, diversity of team members, the points of view, the institutions, career stage, etc. And probably one of the most important things that you all might be wondering about in the blue box here, we can assure that any members of the SDT will not be conflicted from proposing to future SPA sample return mission related solicitations. So things such as instrument proposals. So you may participate in the SDT and not be conflicted from participating in the mission later. And again, we'll provide more details about that process at a later date as well. I think that is my last slide. Yes, okay, great.